Welcome to What We Bring Back, an exploration of the intelligence of the plant kingdom and the relationship we've cultivated as human beings. In this series, we give a voice to explorers of consciousness, from modern-day scientists doing groundbreaking research into the chemistry and physiology of the brain, to shamanistic practitioners whose ongoing dialogues with the Gaian mind has roots stretching back for thousands of years. We will be speaking to those who have ventured into these realms and found solace, peace, and healing. From mystics to addicts, we aim to lend an ear to the voice that speaks from the heart of the earth to our minds, bodies, and souls, making audible what was previously ineffable, and to provide a canvas on which to paint our inner landscapes. This series is a culmination of personal accounts and journeys undertaken by people from all walks of life into the province of the mind, where we cast our nets into the unfathomable abyss, where the minnows of minutiae are too small and the unlanguageable leviathans too big. Yet somewhere in between what is perceived and what it means is what we bring back.
A lot of what we're talking about has to do with the limits that are arbitrarily put in place by our culture and the religious baggage of the past 1,000 years. And how there's this idea that as individuals, we do not have the right or the prerogative or the qualifications to be able to explore anything beyond the mundane world, and that we must trust experts to be the intermediaries for us, and that this is a very limiting viewpoint that only seems to apply to certain things. Let's say you grow up in the context of some religious paradigm and they say, okay, well, you're not allowed to meditate or question ideas about religion or practice certain esoteric breathing techniques or read certain books, or what do my dreams mean? Dreams alone, I think, are such a fascinating mystical experience that just about everyone experiences, and yet they're completely ignored as we race in this pursuit of immediately tangible things, which are probably more abstract than our own dreams. Like, let's say, okay, you're trying to get, $10 million in your bank account before you can sit back and relax and contemplate your dreams. Some experts have speculated that the brain chemistry of the plant medicine experience is similar to the brain chemistry of our dream space. And certainly many people who have experimented have noted that after experimenting with plant medicines, that the content and the color of their dreams changes or shifts or becomes potentiated in some regard. I don't know what dreams mean, but I do get the sense that there's some dreams which are deeply symbolic and give an impression of what we're processing on a psychological level. Other dreams which are just the mundane chatter of what we take in during the day. And then there are other dreams which seem to be even more important, dreams that perhaps guide us in making important decisions of our lives. And these are dismissed in modern times as being not important things to think about. But for most of the history of humanity, they have been considered very important. In fact, people who are acquainted with the story of Joseph of the many-colored coat figures so prominently in the transition from the book of Genesis to the book of Exodus, that this was a man who basically changed the fate of the Hebrew nation and helped them to gain their independence through his own story of liberation, through the interpretation of dreams. He interpreted the Pharaoh's dreams for him, and this allowed him to gain a position of great responsibility, great authority. The history of the world if you're a Christian or you're a Jew, the history of the world has a lot to do with, a guy who interpreted some dreams a long time ago. So I think it's important to consider the significance of dreams, or at least the significance which we place upon them. And as far as the plant medicine experience, it can certainly resemble a dream in its whimsical qualities, where one might be observing juxtaposed elements like the Easter Bunny and Abraham Lincoln. In a moment, you'd say, well, what does this mean? Where is this coming from? This doesn't make any sense. Well, actually, it doesn't have to make sense. It's just showing you what's in there. And what our minds perceive and experience in any given moment is very much the result of the reducing valve of the senses. We like to think that, our eyes just take in all this stuff, and our ears take in all this stuff, and we can smell all this stuff. Actually, our senses leave out more than they take in. I mean, for example, right now we're sitting in this beautiful park, and I can kind of smell the decaying leaves on the ground, and I can smell the pine trees, but I can't smell you. I can't smell this. There's a beautiful fireplace, beautiful old stone fireplace built in 1934. I see ashes on the hearth. I can't smell them from here, but absolutely they are giving off an odor. But probably my senses are saying, you don't need that information right now. That's not so important. And as I look around, I'm not wearing my glasses, so the world is a little bit fuzzy like a French Impressionist painting, but I see the light filtering through the leaves, and I see the trees, and I see where everything is, more or less. I cannot see an ant climbing on a distant branch. Though it is there, I can't see it. I probably don't need to see it. In fact, I can't see the carbon dioxide which is being sucked into the trees right now, and the oxygen which is being given off. I'm sure there's some sort of a scientific instrument which could see that. But do I need to see that in the moment to guarantee my basic survival? No, it's really not. It's not necessary. So when we're ingesting these plants and we're seeing what might be within our subconscious, we might be seeing our past, we might be seeing traumatic moments from childhood, we might be seeing the inside of our stomach and saying, gee, something doesn't look right in there. I have a friend once who had an experience. She said, it was as if I could see this lump in one of my breasts, and I decided to go to a doctor and get that checked out. These are not things that we can, quote-unquote, see during our state of normal waking consciousness, mainly because if we saw those things all the time, it would be at odds with our ability to function in the mundane world. We wouldn't be able to hunt and gather, so to speak. In other words, trade stocks and drive fast when we commute. We wouldn't be able to do those things as effectively if we were simultaneously looking into the pit of our stomach and saying, gee, I think my intestinal flora is out of whack, or gee, I think I've been traumatized by what I went through as a fifth grader, for example. And interestingly enough, we have many enzymes in the stomach which break down these mind-expanding molecules which are present in all sorts of plants and things that we eat regularly. And there are various types of grasses. One of the most powerful psychedelic compounds on Earth is in a grass. The DMT molecule is found in the phalaris grass or canary grass. It grows on golf courses and it grows in front of people's houses. Makes you wonder why people enjoy that smell of cut grass so much, So, somebody who's, very uptight and very opposed to all this sort of things will say, well, I do like to get on my rider lawnmower and cruise around all day. Who knows? We might be getting high when we mow our lawns. Or at least getting into an altered state which is somehow beneficial to us, if you don't like the nomenclature of the phrase getting high, which I personally don't, because there's something about the word getting high which indicates that we're not here and we're not present. But when you're talking about, my friend with the mass in her breast, or someone who has a stomach issue, or someone who's dealing with trauma, that's not about getting high. That's about getting present to the immediate reality of our subconscious and what's happening within us. So we have all of these enzymes in our stomach which render these psychoactive compounds inert, probably because we've been eating these for quite some time. It's important, I think, for us to consider the validity of an experience that one has just sitting still in a chair and ingesting one of these plants and having an experience in which they realize that what they really want to be doing is teaching art to kids or working on a farm. Generally, what comes up for people is that when they put aside the mindset that they've had for a long time, or perspective that they have, a way of looking at their lives, and they look at things a little bit differently, something bubbles up from the subconscious. Whenever we change the way we think, whether it's through a mental exercise or a so-called mundane experience, or a mind-expanding experience that comes from one of these plant medicines, we're getting a different perspective. It's like talking to a therapist. And in indigenous cultures, these plants, these medicinal plants, are considered to be teachers and considered to be masters who will show us things. And there are tribes in the Amazon, for example, who say that all of civilization has come from these plants. And when you ask these indigenous people, you say, well, what does civilization consist of? And they will say, well, it consists of music and being doctors, being medical professionals, understanding the environment, and dancing. And then you might extend that out to hunting as well, depending on which tribe you ask. And if one were to dismiss this as the mindset of a primitive, uncivilized person, of course, as an anthropologist, I cringe at those terms, one of the short-sighted viewpoints of Western culture is that we believe that we're separate from nature. We believe that, okay, here are these trees and these animals and these fish and all these other things, but we humans, we're separate. And any good biologist, any good scientist will say, no, we're very much a part of nature. They'll say, why are there receptors in the human brain for cannabinoids? Why do we have these when they're growing in a plant near us? And of course, some of the secret to that could be found in reflecting on the fact that we have evolved alongside of these plants for millennia. And we have to remember that the timeline of the theory of evolution, the mainstream idea that we've evolved from Australopithecine to Homo habilis, Homo erectus, and so forth, with all these little splinters off, basically we're looking at a 4 million year timeline. This is a theory. And this is based on some finds from Southeast Asia, and our entire evolutionary theory is based on about 2 billiards tables worth of fossils. Any scientific mindset that we have is going to come from the cultural lens of the people contributing to it. So when we're talking about a 20th century science of evolution, we have to think about the 19th century mindset that produced it, a very narrow-minded, racist viewpoint that was very rooted in one particular religious tradition of the time in a couple of different countries. And, when you already believe something, it is very easy to pick facts which support your pre-existing belief while completely ignoring all of the others. Whereas when one ingests a plant medicine and has an experience which is different from our state of normal waking consciousness, one is then confronted by a totally different experience, which we either dismiss as being a fallacy or a flight of fancy or something which is inconsequential, or we consider the merits of the experience